This training video is brought to you by K Alliance. K Alliance is the 21st century's educational corporation, specializing in the most comprehensive enterprise training solutions, ranging from e-learning to instructor-led training. Press play for success. After watching this video, be sure to become a Facebook fan to receive the latest updates, promotions, and course releases. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel to preview the latest desktop, soft skills, and IT training videos.
In Project 2010, it's very convenient to have multiple views that you can utilize for your project creation and when you're tracking and thankfully, finally, when you get to close your project. So let's take a moment to look at a few of those views that are available and one that's wonderfully new for us. So here we are just in our wine tasting sample. Again, this is Microsoft's example that was borrowed off of their website. And what we want to look at is the View tab. And on the View tab, the first thing I want to talk about is a brand new view that's made available in Project 2010 for the first time. And down here on the right, under Split View, we have the feature to turn on a new timeline. So what happens is when you turn this on, you get to visually see in one spot the beginning and the ending dates of the project and then milestones in between. So it's just monthly, June, July, August. So the project starts in today, which is May 12th, 2010 in our example, and ends on September 3rd, 2010. That's the finish date. So all this is right now is one line that says visually, here's where we start and here's where we stop. Well, that might be all you need, and all you want is simply to have that big long timeline across the top that's visually available for you. But another thing that people like to do with this timeline is they like to add important items from the project. Now, people who use this timeline, I'm going to guess, are not going to add every single project line item, but let's look at what you might want to do. For instance, it's important that the person that you're sending a picture of the timeline to, they are in charge of line number 6 here, identifying potential locations. And you want to make sure that they know where they fall on the timeline. Well, one way you can add this event or task, we'll call it a task, to the timeline is you can switch to a right click, and at the very bottom, there's the line that says Add to Timeline. Well, look at the icon there. There's the picture of the icon. I'll show you where this is found on the ribbon, but it helps to know what the picture looks like. So you can choose with the right click and then selecting Add to Timeline, and you can see how it now places that item onto the timeline. And when I rest my mouse, it tells me what the task is called, the start date, the finish date, the duration, and we aren't tracking this project, so there's no completion yet to it. But if you were tracking, it would also tell you if it were complete or the percentage of completion. So as you're working with the timeline, you can always go through, scroll through your project, and you can choose those lines that you would like to add to the timeline. So one of the ways that I have used this is for a specific person. I will go highlight the elements from the project that I want that person to be aware of, and then I'll email them a picture of the timeline. So this person is also in charge of Choose Printing Service. We already know that you can right click, but if you go to your Task tab, down on the right end of the Task tab, there's your icon. There's that same picture, how you add your task to the timeline. So I'll click on that button, and it's been added in. Now what I want you to notice is it happens simultaneously, so visually I can identify that I've asked the same person to do more than one task that happens at the same time. But I'm okay with that, and they're okay with that, it works. And I also want you to notice that you can't read everything on it because this task is 1 day in duration, where the other task is longer in duration. Now let me scroll down a bit, and let's assume, and remember I'm just making all this up, that they also have this, the recruit sponsors, I'll just hold my mouse still, recruit sponsors from businesses and other organizations, that's also their task. So I'll right click and add that to the timeline. And that one's clearly visible as to what that person needs to do. So as you're using the timeline, you'll discover what you want to add to the timeline, what works for you, what doesn't work, what you want on the timeline, what you don't want on the timeline. Now once I have something added to the timeline, I'm just switching to a right click on the timeline that's on here, and you'll notice that there are choices on what to do with the object once it's on the timeline, and one of them is to remove it. So anytime you want to remove an object from the timeline or change it. You can display it as a call out. You can display it as a bar. You'll want to go in and play with these features. I think that you'll find that visually this view is going to be one that you use and that you definitely like. Now, one last thing before I leave this. Now that I've clicked on the timeline, notice my toolbar. On my toolbar now, I have timeline tools, and I have all types of formats that are available for me for working with the objects on the timeline. So the timeline can have formatting, you can make it fancy and beautiful, you can leave the defaults if you want to, but you sure can go out here and work with all kinds of opportunities within your timeline to make it visually appealing and do the job that it's intended to do, and that's keep people on task so they don't forget things. So that's a new view, and let's remember where that came from. On the View tab, it's simply a check mark. It's either on or it's off. So if you don't want it on, just turn it off and it's gone. It's totally up to you if you want it or not. While we're on the View tab, over here to the left, these are the typical popular views that people use. So there's the Gantt chart view. Calendar view is another very popular view because you get to see via a calendar. Let me just scroll over here for you. I'm just scrolling through the months. So you can see on the calendar what's happening inside of your project, and some people prefer the calendar view. You also have the network diagram view, and again, personal preference. I'm just going to zoom this one out a little bit. Some people prefer the network diagram view. Let me scroll out a little bit, zoom out a little bit more, where you get to see big picture-wise. Again, it's what you like, what view works the best for you, what view works the best for the people on your team. But check out the different views. You have task views, and then when we get into resources, there are also resource views. So when I click on a resource sheet, this is a list of all of the resources. Oh gosh, you know what that red's all about? That red means that those people are over allocated. It means that they're doing two things at the exact same time. And that indicates to me, if I were the project manager here, that I would need to go double check what I have these people assigned to. So a really nice new view in Project 2010 is this Team Planner. When I click on the Team Planner, what the Team Planner does is it identifies, oops, I don't mean to rest that, sorry. It identifies for me on the left the name of the resource, and then on the right, all of the things that that person has been assigned to and when. So it's easy for me to see, wow, this person's doing a lot of things at the same time, and then I can identify if that indeed works or if I would need to change that person to do a different task. And you would just scroll through here and you can quickly and easily see. It's a wonderful, nice new Project 2010 view that was not available before, so if you're thinking, wow, I've never seen that, it's because it's new. And there's also the resource usage sheet, and then don't forget other. There's other inside of resource sheets, and there's also other inside of task views. So if you're new to project, what I would recommend is opening up one of Project's templates that comes standard with Microsoft Project. Go into the View tab and take a look at some of the views that are available for you. You'll find your favorites, and there are some that you will use regularly. There's others that you may never utilize only because they're not necessary in the job that you do. But take 3 to 5 minutes one day, go check out the different views that are available so at least you know what's out there and you can determine which ones you like based on how much you use those.